Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee, being held on this Thursday, the 17th of October 2024. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes, and I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. To the public present, if you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery. The recordings will be held by the council for 5 months. And please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. Okay. So go on to item 1, which is apologies. And we've received apologies from Councillor Baker and Councillor Wheeler. And I think other than that, we're all present, so thank you for that. Any declarations of interest at item 2? No? Good. Item 3 then is declarations of independent site visits. Anybody wants to declare a site visit? Councillor Bamford?
Yes, I visited 187 outside of the Planning View. I think I went on Monday, 187 Leckhampton Road. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay. Now the minutes of the last meeting, which have been circulated. Is everybody happy that they're a true record? Yes. Happy for me to sign them as such then? There are no public questions at item 5. So we move on to the applications in front of us. And the first one is 6A, 187 Leckhampton Road. I'll ask Michelle if she will give us an introduction to the case, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the application relates to 187 Leckhampton Road and proposes the erection of a single-storey rear extensions, a first-floor side extension, and associated alterations to include replacement windows and external wall and roof insulation. The scheme has been significantly amended during the course of the application and is before the Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Hallwood. So the site's located on the western side of Leckhampton Road within Leckhampton with Warden Hill Parish and comprises a 2-storey dwelling within a sizable plot. And to the rear, the site backs onto the gardens of properties in Gifford Way. And then just here we've got a Google Earth image looking at the front of the property with its neighbours. And then similarly, a view of the rear. And it should be noted that neighbouring properties sit at a different land level as the land rises from north to south up the Leckhampton Road. And then here we've got some photographs from within the application site and then from the neighbouring properties. So I'll just leave those up there for a minute for you to have a look. And then we've got the block plans. So the bottom image shows the extent of development now proposed. And then the existing and proposed elevations. So the first floor side extension will be gable fronted with facing and roofing materials to match the existing dwelling. Whilst to the rear a more contemporary design approach has been taken with a mix of standing seam metal cladding, vertical timber cladding and stone. And then these are the floor plans to show the existing and proposed. And then these comparative elevations just seek to demonstrate the significant revisions that have been made to the scheme during the course of the application. So you've got the scheme as it originally came in on the left, and then the scheme that's being considered today on the right. And then similarly, the floor plans. And so the key planning matters in considering this application are design and neighbouring amenity. And for the reasons set out in the officer report, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. We have three speakers, an objector, the applicant and the ward councillor to speak. You all have 5 minutes, and I will give you a reminder just before, 30 seconds before the end, to remind you that your speech is coming to an end. So the first speaker I would like to ask Angus Hogarth as the objector to come to the microphone. And when you're ready, I will start my countdown.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me if I do a little shaking, I haven't done this before. I'm Angus Hogarth, and I live with my family at 185 Leckhampton Road, with our neighbour 187 on our south side, who are effectively up the hill from and on a higher elevation to us. When the first application was submitted, my wife was reduced to tears and said, "I won't be able to live here, we'll have to move," because of the loss of outlook and amenity we've enjoyed for 15 years. We invited 187 to stand in our garden and reflect on their application. They told us they wanted better views of the hills. How can that be at the expense of 185 and 183 losing their outlook? 187 later told us that the first application was a wish list, meaning, of course, that a later application will be deemed to be offering concessions over the first application. Therefore, it can't be construed as a first application. Some 39 years ago, the previous owner of 187 widened the garage to the boundary line of 185 and proceeded to raise its floor level to that of the house. Added to this, they built a new utility room whose floor level they also brought up to the house floor. Here lies the start of the problem we're faced with today, as today's owners want to build a first floor level on top of this already raised garage uphill from us and extend into the garden whilst maintaining this raised floor level. The first floor extension would in essence be a 1.5-storey extension right on our boundary line. This would create the overbearing structure on 185 that would result in our loss of outlook, and similarly to 183. However, a primary aim of 187 would be achieved, a better view for themselves of the hills. We offered suggestions to 187, such as putting steps in to lower the overall height, but this was not acceptable. They want the house and its patio all on one level, no matter the impact on their neighbours the raised platform has in creating such a monolith. It feels as if 187 are expanding their maximum potential in both height, width and external floor space, despite being aware of the negative impact on their neighbours. The concessions made on subsequent applications have not addressed our main objections to this application. Neighbour 189, south of 187, faces an additional worry, that of being overlooked and children's bedrooms being seen into because of this raised patio and additional windows. Why should 189 sacrifice land to grow sufficiently high privacy hedging, and would they be allowed to? 189's first floor extension above their garage is set back twice with returns from the front gable, all to achieve a level of subservience. If the council don't consider subservience with 187, then an incorrect decision will have been made on 189's extension, which would be unfair on 189 and possibly lead to a legal challenge. Finally, if this planning application is approved, neighbouring properties in the road may receive approval for similar builds, which in time would be detrimental to the community, damage the character and appearance of the area, all of which sits close to a conservation area and an area of outstanding natural beauty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hogarth. You were well within your time limit, so thank you. Now I would like to come to, sorry, Mr. Hogarth, could you turn the microphone off? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'd like to ask Kevin Costello, I think you're going to be using a roving mic for this. You also have the 5 minutes, as I indicated before. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We make this application because we wish to create a sustainable and eco-friendly modern home whilst retaining our house's character. We wish to have much more connection between our home and garden than we do currently, hence moving the main living space to the rear of the house. We've never done an application like this before, and have done our best to follow the process to the letter, and have made significant voluntary compromises along the way, as evidenced by our 2 sets of revised plans. Those first sets of revised plans were not a wish list, as alleged. They were genuine plans, and we've made concessions since then. We did this not because we did not think they would be approved, but solely because we listened to our neighbours' concerns about the potential impact on them and wanted to mitigate this as much as possible. Such significant compromises as we have made have never been acknowledged by our neighbours, and every aspect of the project has been criticised, leading us to conclude that the only course of action they would be happy with is for us to do nothing. We believe in the right to object and that it's possible to respectfully disagree, but all we have done is submit plans to make improvements to our home, and we do not believe we should have to be subject to the type of abuse we have received. We ask the committee to take a step back and think about the disproportionate nature of the objections, both in terms of amount of material submitted and the hostility for what is now comparatively a fairly small-scale extension. Many of the statements are clearly inaccurate or exaggerated, and there's not the time here to correct each of them. In addition, it is worth reflecting that the planning process should not be a platform for neighbours to threaten, attempt to intimidate, bully and insult applicants, which is what 189 Leckhampton Road has done to us in this case. Insulting our children and casting aspersions on our character by way of the planning forum cannot be justified and should not be mislabelled as strength of feeling. Furthermore, these matters are not relevant to planning. Helpfully, the planning officer's report has distilled the huge number of objections down into the pertinent issues and noted the reasons under planning rules in respect of each why the scheme should be allowed, and has recommended to permit in full, and we rely on the technical analysis in her report. There is recent precedent for rear extensions on this side of the road. Firstly, the same neighbours at 189 who have vociferously opposed our plans have themselves extended by 4 metres to the rear on our side. And secondly, 191 have extended 7 metres from the building line. Neither planning application received a single objection, another reason we were surprised at the level of hostility to our plans. Although it is very clear that loss of view is not a reason to object, this and alleged overbearing has essentially been the focus of objections. Until the high extension at 189 was built, our house had a view to the south from inside, but now it is the only house in a row of at least 5 houses not to have this. Our plans will, however, not block the view south from 185's house, but share it, which we feel is a good compromise. Certain fixed factors are difficult to get around no matter how much we try. Firstly, as we live on a hill, our garden and house are roughly 1 metre higher than 185's. Also, and importantly, our house is currently built up to the boundary, and we're not in favour of knocking it down and starting again. We want to keep as much of the current structure as possible and build at the current height of the ground floor. We are not building up to the ground floor level as been repeatedly claimed, and the planning officer has noted that any increase in the patio height to a line is allowed under permitted development in this case. The boundary is also almost 5 metres from 185's house, which reduces any potential overbearing. Furthermore, we've taken a number of measures to try and mitigate any potential impact on 185. For example, we changed in the second set of plans a pitched roof to a nearly flat roof on our rear extension to reduce the height. We suggested to 185 that we step down the extension by 3 steps into what was then a proposed 4.5 metre extension, and they said they did not think that would alleviate their concerns. So we decided to reduce the extension right
You have
down
30 seconds.
to 2 metres at the level of the house, but making steps in this room no longer viable. We also removed the proposed part of the second-storey extension over the utility, thus maintaining 185's treasured view of Leckhampton Hill from their bedroom, which we did even though this was to the detriment of our plans for the first floor and not something we wanted to do. We hope the Planning Committee can look at the local precedent of extensions, the significant compromises we've made in light of our neighbours' concerns, and the relatively small size of our planned extensions compared to our property and garden size,
Could you bring it to a close now, please? Thank you.
and decide to grant our planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Costello. And now Councillor Horwood, again, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm, yes, Councillor for Leckhampton and also a board or Cheltenham's board member on the Cotswold National Landscape, Cotswold AONB board as it's called. And I'm speaking to this application rather than specifically for or against it. Partly, I have to say, because I'm also a little taken aback by the force of some of the objections. And I rather agree, and particularly perhaps from slightly further away properties rather than the ones immediately downhill, like 185 and Mr. Hogarth. I rather agree with the officer's report that the gable design is actually, it seems to me, quite an attempt to fit in with the streetscape, that modern materials on rear extensions not uncommon in Leckhampton, and I do recognise that significant modifications have been made to the designs as Mr. and Mrs. Costello have gone forward. But you have to judge the application actually in front of you, obviously. And that still seems to me it has two issues which particularly affect 185 and the other properties further downhill. And the extension is right next to that boundary, obviously. They relate to the AONB and to the topography and the floor level of the rear extension. And it seems to me that does carry implications of the permission of significant incremental extensions on hillsides looking up to the hill, which over time could potentially affect the whole community. And I think that's an important consideration. On the AONB, I was slightly surprised by the fact that the key policy in the JCS was not referred to in the officer's report. And I have repeatedly tried to raise this, not only on this application. Policy SD7 of the JCS says all development proposals in or within the setting of the Cotswold AONB will be required to conserve and, where appropriate, enhance its landscape, scenic beauty, wildlife, cultural heritage and other special qualities. Proposals will be required to be consistent with the policies set out in the Cotswolds AONB management plan. So at one remove, you have to pay attention to the policies in that management plan. And just to be clear from the JCS, it says the management plan and guidance are material considerations in determining planning applications. And at 4.73, it says development close to but outside the AONB boundary, like this one, have the potential to have detrimental impact on its setting through, for example, its impact upon key views. And views are explicitly referred to in policy CE 1.2 of the Cotswold AONB management plan, which says proposals that are likely to impact on or create change in the landscape of the Cotswolds national landscape should have regard to the scenic quality of the location and its setting and ensure that views, including those into and out of the national landscape and visual amenity, are conserved and enhanced. So I'm afraid views into and out of the AONB are a material consideration. There's no reference here to those being only public views as opposed to private views. And if you think about it, right across the Cotswolds, many of the views are on private land and into and out of private land. So that would be pretty impossible anyway. And it goes on to say, it's important to consider the cumulative impact of changes on landscape character. And it mentions even incremental building development. It says the surroundings and setting of the natural landscape are important to its landscape and scenic beauty. For example, the impact of development and land management outside the national landscape on views from and to the national landscape is an important consideration, as is the retention of key views. So I think that's pretty clear, actually, that you should be paying attention to this material consideration to which policy SD7 commits you. The last thing I just want to say is about this issue of the floor level. Because of the topography of the site, which you'll have seen if you've been on a site visit, the floor level of the house is very significantly higher than the garden level behind 187. And that in turn is, because of the hillside, much higher than the gardens below. So the fact that the extension continues the floor line means it is much higher than it, I have to say, than I think it really has to be. And it looks therefore much bigger than you would get the impression from the elevation drawings for properties 185 and below. So I think there could be a better design, although I think there have been very significant modifications, I accept that. And I am worried about this incremental impact of these large extensions over time, degrading everybody's views of the hillside eventually. And I think policy is pretty clear on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Horwood. Just on time. Okay. You've heard the speakers. Are there any members' questions to the officers? Councillor Allen.
Thank you for both the speakers and for the report. I know detail and consideration has been given into it, but I think Councillor Horwood raises a valid point regarding the AONB. Is it possible to speak to why this wasn't included in the report, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so officers reach a different view and don't find that policy to be particularly relevant to this application, as set out in the report. The policies within the conservation, Cotswold Conservation Board's policies, whilst it's not explicitly set out that it's not private views, that isn't the view that officers take. And in any event, the loss of a private view or a distant view is never a material planning consideration. I mean, that's something that goes out on the back of all of our neighbour letters highlighting that. So, yeah, our view is that the policy isn't directly relevant, and we're satisfied that given the minimal footprint of the extension, that it wouldn't have any impact. In fact, any impact on the views in or out of the AONB.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Bamford.
Well, two things. Firstly, I'm slightly confused now because on one side, the policy clearly says that private views can be a consideration, and you've now said they're never a consideration. So I'd like clarity on that, please. But the other thing I would welcome, because unfortunately I wasn't able to go on planning view, so I've not got a feeling for how land drops away at the back. I was only able to look from the front, and clearly that is a material consideration. I just wonder if you did have some slides, I think, Google Earth type slides, which may have given a perspective on that, which would be very helpful. Thanks. Right, it's difficult to work it out, isn't it, from that? I wish I'd been there, sorry.
In that case, we'll go into, Councillor Allen, yes.
Sorry, Chair, I don't think Councillor Bamford's point regarding the clarity was addressed. Is it possible to address this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so loss of a distant view, and officers have advised members of this on numerous occasions, is not a material planning consideration. And the Cotswold Conservation Board's management plan doesn't specifically refer to private individuals' views. It doesn't not mention them, but it doesn't specifically mention them either. So officers are satisfied that this is as the same as any other case whereby we cannot protect a view, a distant view. We can consider immediate outlook, but not a distant view.
Thank you. So we'll go into debate then. Any member wishing to put forward a view? No?
Sorry. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something with regard to, you mentioned the view into a window from, I think it's from the south side, into a window in 189. But at present, am I right that the windows on the south side are clear glazed and that the objection, and that when the plans go through, they've got to be in obscured glass, and it's only one window over on the side? I think the plan would be better, actually, if you can show me the plans. As I understand it, 189 are objecting to one window which they say will look into a bedroom in their house. But as I looked at the elevation, it seemed to me that at the moment there were already two clear glazed windows looking that way, and that if the planning application goes ahead, those two windows will be obscured. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not putting it very clearly.
This is rather a question rather than a debate, but...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
no,
I
fine.
just wanted to clarify that I'm right in
clarification.
my own mind. I'm sorry. Yes. Now, on the south side, at the moment, there's a porch, the second one from the left on the top row. There's a porch, there's a window above it. Yeah, there's a window above it and there's a window to the side of it, and they're all clear glass, aren't they, at the moment? They're not. Ah, thank you. That's why I wanted some clarification on that. Thank you. Sorry. But they are going to be obscured glass, are they, when it's...
Proposing obscure glass on all of the windows towards the front of the property, but the rearmost window at first floor and ground floor are proposed to be clear glazed.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't ask that at the right time.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
I'm surprised there isn't more debate. I fear that it's actually because the tone of the objections and the response has been regrettably quite severe. And I would just say, I would hope, first of all, that the trees which run along the side, which have no value, we can't condition that they remain, I hope you can retain them for the sake of your neighbour. Personally, I would have liked to see the patio dropped a little bit, just again, for the sake of common courtesy amongst neighbours. But most of all, I wanted to say, whatever happens this evening, and I certainly don't know what will happen, my neighbours threw a party for my husband's 80th birthday, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to live with good neighbourly contact. And whatever happens, I do hope that you will be able to become courteous and kind to each other for the sake of the children, if not for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Not exactly a planning problem, but it's good advice. Thank you very much for that. Any others on debate?
Chair, I wonder if I might, I wonder if I might be permitted just a brief point of information and clarification, because I fear I may have.
I'm sorry, Councillor Horwood, you do know the protocols.
No.
Once you've spoken, I'm afraid that's it. Okay. Do you want?
Not really in relation to the actual application. I just wanted to make clear that when I was talking about forceful objections, I wasn't referring to Mr. Hogarth, who's present, just for Councillor. But I accept if I can't say that.
Councillor Bamford.
Yes, I do feel this is such a marginal decision that it is a pity if we don't have a more lengthy debate. Having visited, I'm really sorry I didn't get on planning view, because I would have really liked to have understood the position from 185's perspective better than frankly than I can. Having read the officer report and viewed the site from the front, I had no doubt I would come along and vote in favour. Having listened to the situation at the back, it is unfortunate. Probably that's not enough to sway my vote at the moment, unless something else comes out in debate. But I would welcome the thoughts of those that went on planning view with respect to the height of the patio that's proposed at the back, and how that could be mitigated. Thanks.
Chair, if I may, through you, Chair, just a quick point. If I heard Councillor Bamford correctly, I think you said you had already made up your mind that you were going to come and vote in favour. So if you've predetermined the matter, and so, no, those are the words you've used for the recording, Councillor Bamford. So just point of clarification, had you predetermined the matter before this evening? Thank you.
I'm sorry, but whenever you if you read a report, you must be when you've read the report, you must have some thoughts in your mind. You can't possibly have a blank screen. Simply from that report, I am saying that was where my mind was. And obviously I visited the place, and you have thoughts. You can't just blank it all out. Obviously I will come here and listen to the debate, and I will only form a final view when I've read the officer's report, done the visit, and heard the debate. I don't think that's predetermination, I'm sorry.
It's not, and that's why I wanted the clarification. Thank you, Councillor Bamford.
Thank you. It's a tricky issue, isn't it? But yeah, you've clarified your situation, and I don't think there's any problem with that. Councillor Allen.
Thank you. I don't wish to speak in favour or against this application, but in the same style as Councillor Clark, I'd like to add that there really should be some consideration given to the landscaping around the patio. I think it would help to ease neighbourhood tensions, but also to work in favour of neighbourhood amenity as well, which is a material planning consideration. And now I'm aware that the report says that the application is recommended for permission, granted to, subject to conditions. But I really do think emphasis should be placed on some form of community cooperation around landscaping, if that is at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on condition?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say really that if the committee are minded to grant permission, and if the committee feel that a landscaping condition is necessary to mitigate further any issues that the committee see, it's obviously within the gift of the committee to impose a landscaping condition that would require planting within a specified time period, and our approval of the nature of that planting before it was undertaken. But that is within the power of the committee to do that if it so wishes.
Chair, if I may just clarify, so from the head of planning then, obviously are content that the tests for a condition are met in relation to landscaping.
Are there any other comments then? Do you wish to put an extra condition in, Councillor Allen, or?
I've done this before. Yeah, please, if I could, yeah. If there could be a condition for landscaping, if permission is granted, that would be appreciated. I mean, do I have to be specific in terms of the landscape that's required?
I think it would be helpful, otherwise we're not knowing what we're going to approve, so, yeah.
So I think it would be appropriate if there were, I mean, again, it could be hedgerows, it could be some form of tree planting or small tree planting if possible, but something to obscure the view potentially between 185 and 187. Because standing there at 187 and seeing the view into 185, I think it was quite stark. Again, if the committee disagrees with me, please do say. But in my opinion, I did think some landscaping would go a long way in helping to ease some of the community tensions that are clearly present in this application.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, looking at the plans, the patio extends across to the boundary, and this would be a plan that members would be approving. So I think if you were to impose a landscaping plan, it would need to be with a clear sort of acceptance that it would be very minimal planting that could be achieved. And I think it's also just worth mentioning that a patio at this height, because of the sloping nature of the site, could actually be implemented under permitted development. Because for the purposes of permitted development, the height is taken from the land level immediately adjacent to the house. So where you have got a sloping site, you've actually, the 300 mil height that's given for the raised terrace only needs to achieve that height immediately adjacent to the back of the house. It can then extend out at that level. That is something that is allowed under permitted development, and that guidance is set out in the technical guidance. So.
Thank you very much.
Chair, may I make a suggestion, perhaps that the actual condition itself, taking into account what Councillor Allen said, perhaps that could be delegated to the head of planning, Chair?
Would you be happy with us to take that on board after the meeting?
Yes, please, yeah, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, there doesn't seem to be any other debate going on, so we will come to the vote on this. It is for permit, and we're using the voting system on the screen, so if you would either vote for, against, or abstain, please. I think there's one missing, isn't there? We've only got 8 votes. We've got 9 people.
Yourself, 9, 9 yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, there is 8, isn't it? 9, there is 9, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got the third.
All right, we've got 9 votes now. So that is 6 votes for the application to be approved, none against, and 3 abstentions. So it is approved. Thank you. So we can now move on to the second item, which is 122A Brunswick Street. And I'll ask the officer, Claire, to take us through it.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to the residential properties 122A to 126B Brunswick Street, specifically relating to the land to the rear of this terrace of 3 buildings. The submission proposes the erection of a new secure bin storage area, including new landscaping and associated fencing. The bin storage area is required in response to the requirements for recycling, building, fire regulations and guidelines on the accessibility for refuse collection. The application requires a committee decision as the applicants are the Borough Council, and the recommendation is to permit. So here we've got the site location plan and an aerial view of the site. The properties front Brunswick Street, however, the rear of the properties is accessed via Denali Parade, which is a vehicular dead end. Only pedestrian access is through to Brunswick Street. We've got the existing and proposed block plans. You can see the new pathway to the bin store, then the bin store itself to the northern part of the site, and then the vegetation on that northern boundary, which is both so it's part retained and part new planting. We've got the proposed elevations. You can see that the bin store area is sited behind the existing and new planting, which is on the northern boundary. The fencing would be a 2-metre high Paladin mesh fence. So you can just see examples of the type of fence at the bottom right hand corner. The other works include part of an existing picket fence to be replaced with a gate at the same height and style as the existing picket fence. That's just shown in elevation BB at the bottom. And just some street view photos to show the existing layout. So the key considerations for this application are design and the impact on conservation area and street scene. The store is of a functional design. The siting of the store would extend beyond the side elevation of the end property. However, given the retained and proposed planting and the layout of the street, there'd be limited views of the development and therefore limited impact on the street scene and wider area. Furthermore, the mesh-style fencing would provide a lightweight visual impact. Impact on neighbouring amenity, as no unacceptable impact has been identified. Furthermore, the siting of the bin store would not result in an unacceptable loss of private amenity space for the occupiers of the properties. Within the submission, it sets out that the owners of the properties for which the bin store would serve have been consulted by the applicant. And sustainable development, given the nature of the development, officers acknowledge there's little to no opportunity to include low carbon technologies or features within this type of development. So the recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions set out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have no speakers, so are there any questions to the officers? No. In that case, we'll go into debate, if there is any debate. Anybody wants to? Councillor Clark.
Sorry, I think I find the materials quite ugly. Is anything going to grow up over the metal fencing?
Sorry, was that a question, Councillor Clark, or?
Yes, so there is existing planting, as you could see on the boundary, which is partly to be retained, and they're going to plant new planting as well. So as you can see on the elevations, it shows that the fencing would be slightly higher than the vegetation, but it's only a very minimal amount. And yeah, the fencing is sort of mesh style, so it would be relatively sort of lightweight and not very visible, but yeah, you would still see it.
Yes, thank you. So we're still in debate, if anybody wants to come in. All very muted tonight. That's God. Right. I don't think there's anything for the officer to come back on because we had no debate. So again, we'll be using the voting system. All those in favour of the bin storage, please show. All those against, show similarly. Oh, I haven't voted. Helps. So that's unanimously for. So that's approved. 9 votes to none against and no abstentions. Thank you. All right. You've come on to item 7, which is the appeal updates, which you hopefully noted. Item 8, there are no other outstanding or urgent issues. So I am happy to close the meeting, and the next scheduled meeting is the 14th of November. So thank you for your attendance. Safe journey home.